Hey there, cats and kitties. I'm the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and this is going to be a brief little review for Btooom, Episode 4. Lots of crazy stuff going on in this episode that all seemingly revolves around the debut of new character Kira. Now, this is the cat we saw at the tail end of the last episode. We had Ryota and Tyra basically coming across him in the woods, and, he's standing over like this bloody corpse. He's got a tree mangled behind him. As I said in my previous review, I just thought this kid went psycho. And, as we find out in this episode, that couldn't have been further from the truth because he's been psycho for a while. Essentially, we find out that in a flashback at the start of this episode, he was arrested for having murdered and then raped 3 women. And because he was, a kid, he was going to be let off by the law. Essentially, his father had hired this highbrow lawyer, and it looked like, for all intents and purposes, the cops were pretty frustrated he was going to be let go. Well, as it happens, I'm not exactly sure, but all 3 of them were actually shipped off to the Btooom Island together, the lawyer, the father, and the kid. And it just is really sickening and intriguing at the same time, seeing how far the abuse has gone with his father. Of course, there must have been emotional abuse because this kid is just beyond reproach as far as being helped. I don't think you can help a kid who looks at life like it's all one big game, like it's not real, and he doesn't have a sense of right and wrong as far as the lives of others, whether it be animals or people and that kind of thing. I think he is just beyond being helped at this point, and a lot of that has to do with how jerky his father is. As we see in this episode, there's a point where, they're dropping those canisters of food and all of that stuff, and the 3 of them go to get it, and we see the father just manhandling his kid, grabbing him by the crotch and making his kid squeal. We see that there's probably been a history of this, although they don't show it that explicitly, but it's basically hinted at, and this kid just has enough. He's kind of been mentored a little bit by the lawyer about standing up to his father, letting his father know how he feels and that kind of thing, but what this kid hears is, basically get back at your dad. And he uses one of his special explosives, which just annihilates the father, sends the lawyer running, and this is the point where Ryota and Tyra come upon him. Now, what unfolds from there is a pretty cat and mouse game of like one-upping between Ryota and Kyra, because they are both some of the best players in the world, and they can kind of call each other's, tactics and stuff like that. But very interestingly, we actually sort of have a change of pace, because at one point you have Ryota smacking his head on a rock, and suddenly it's almost as if he is now taking on the persona of Kira, and that he doesn't believe what his surroundings are real, that he believes it's an actual game, and so he starts to play to win. And there's a real shocking revelation moment where he's finally almost beaten Kira, that he wakes up, he snaps out of it, and he realizes, oh my god, I almost just killed again. So of course the moral high ground is still with our main character, which was refreshing to see, but it's just intriguing to me how much further things like this are going to unfold for these characters, because we're seeing brief glimpses of how not everybody may take that moral high ground necessarily between them. I mean, you have Tyra going back and sort of worming his way back to Kira's father's body and taking the crystal out of his hand, and yet he's still wishing for Ryota to be okay. So it's like, what kind of game is this old man playing? And then, of course, there's Himeko, who we see briefly overseeing the cat and mouse game sort of between Kira and Ryota, and you have to wonder what's going on in her head. Is she going to be just about survival? Is she going to be about teamwork? And that's the intriguing thing that's going to be unfolding for these characters. Of course, it's still arguable whether, what I said about Ryota's moral high ground is true, because, of course, as we see, he ties the kid to a tree, essentially leaves him a candy bar, but then he takes all his weapons and his food and stuff like that. So, is it just desserts? Is it justice? I don't know. It's very intriguing, the levels and the depths to where this series could go, and I'm enjoying the hell out of it. So, as usual, I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below what you thought of Episode 4, what you're thinking of the series, if you've read the manga, if you plan to after the series, and I definitely do want to check it out at some point, but, who knows. And that's going to be pretty much it for me on this one, so I hope you're all doing well, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.